Well, good afternoon, everyone. Super excited to have you all here. You chose well. This is a phenomenal session you have coming your way. We are fortunate to have Suzanne Banta with us. She's from the Henry County Public Library, and leads the department of incredibly creative and innovative people there. And the whole place is just bubbling with energy and creativity, working within their community, partnering within their community, reaching the needs of their community, and creating lifelong learners. These are people that are not afraid to make messes. It's amazing. I love it. So Suzanne grew up in libraries, was raised by proud women who loved reading and stories. Super proud to continue their legacy. She mentioned that she even has a summer reading certificate from 1985 framed in her office. So just to give you an idea of how long she's been in libraries. So we're going to just really dive into a lot of great ideas here. All of this material is available, and I'll give you directions for that. So just enjoy. Suzanne, thank you so much for being here and for the preparation you've already done and the time you spent thinking through what you were going to say. Looking forward to listening to you. So I'm going to be quiet and let you just rock everyone's world. So thank you, Suzanne.
Well, thank you, Amy. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for What Will We Make?, which will be about process art and the importance of process art in learning, which is something that I feel very passionate about. My favorite definition of process art is not my own. It comes from Tinker Lab's Guide to Process Art, or Complete Guide to Process Art for Kids, that you can just search for. But according to Tinker Lab, process art is art that is child-directed, choice-driven, and celebrates the experience of discovery. In process art, the final product is always unique, and the focus lies in the creation of the work, not the outcome. And I really like that definition because it has some of my favorite words in it. You know, child-directed and choice and celebration and discovery and uniqueness. And before we dive into why process art is important and the materials that we use and the difference between process and project art, I just kind of want to gauge everybody who's listening and your comfort level with process art. So if everybody will just put in the chat on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the process art feels a little daunting or scary, or maybe you're worried about the mess, and then 5 being I love process art and it's amazing and we do it all the time. If everybody would just let me know on a scale of 1 to 5, like how comfortable you are with process art, how much you use it in your library programs. Oh, yay, there's a 5. Just so I can kind of know where everybody stands and how deep I need to go into some things. There are some 5s. If you're more on that one end, hopefully by the end, my goal is to get you a little bit closer to that 5. And those of you that are 5, some of this will just be a nice reminder. But also toward the end, we're going to get into some library tested examples that we've actually done. If you're new to process art, you might have heard project versus process a lot, which I don't feel like it's necessarily like an either or versus, but there are some key differences between project and process art. And if you have that information, it's really a foundation that you can build on to get to where you're going. The first big difference between the two are where you end up. Project art is all about that finished piece, that with every child ending up with a similar project. Like everybody starts with pieces to make a snowman, and then they all end up with a similar looking snowman. Maybe they're a little different because maybe, somebody uses a different colored scarf, or maybe somebody has their arms coming out of their hat, but everybody has a snowman at the end. The focus of process art is not what you end up with, but it's kind of the journey to get there. So instead of pre-cut pieces, every kid just has a bunch of really cool materials to explore, like some homemade puffy paint and some sparkly treasures, which is what Dathan is doing in our process art at Storytime a while ago. So he's not going to necessarily end up with a snowman at the end. He might have a snowman, or he might have a blizzard, or he might have the ocean, or he might have something that I had no idea was possible. Because at the end of process art, no two projects are gonna look alike, and no two kids are going to use the same process to get to the end of that project. But it's really cool because that means that there's no right or wrong way to use the materials to come up with their project. Another key difference is that project art is very much driven by the adult, whether that adult is a parent or a caregiver, or whether that adult is a librarian leading story time or whatever program you're doing. That grown-up is making all the decisions for the kids. As a grown-up, we're deciding what the pieces will look like, that the snowman will have round shapes in its body. We're deciding what materials are. By providing that example for the kids, I'm actually telling the kids that the tape will be a scarf, or, buttons will look round, or things like that. So we're doing a lot of work, and we're providing examples and step-by-step instructions for those kids and kind of telling them what to do. It also leaves it open for those caregivers who come to story time to step in to quote fix mistakes that the kids have made. So at the end of project art, kids will ask questions like, is this right? Or say things like, mine doesn't look like yours, out of frustration. In process art, however, all we're doing is providing the instruction or the materials and then getting out of the way so that the kids can make all of the examples or make all the decisions on their own. So Dathan is deciding whether he wants to use a lot of puffy paint or a little puffy paint. He's going to make a decision of whether he wants to use a craft stick to spread it around, or he wants to use his hands, because there's always that kid that will use their hands for everything. He's going to decide what treasures he wants to add to his project. So he's going to decide whether he wants to put foam shapes in that puffy paint. He wants to add some eyeballs. He wants to put some sparkly things in there. All the decisions are up to him. And because there's no right or wrong way, then you're not going to hear mine doesn't look like yours, because first of all, there's no example for it to look like, but also because it's all about the journey instead of that end piece. He's not going to say this isn't right or this doesn't look like yours. Instead, he's going to talk about, how much fun he had, or tell you all about the story of his art project, which is always really cool. And like I said, a lot of people view this as like project versus process. I don't necessarily view it that way. I think you can ease in to process art by using what I like to refer to as semi-process art, which is taking a project that really is very much a project-based art and adding a process component. Not only is it a great way to ease yourself into process art without jumping in with both feet, it's also a way to ease your caregivers in if you're a little concerned about how they're gonna take to some of these new things you're trying to do. And you still get a little bit of the benefits that we'll talk about in a little bit with semi-process art. This is a project we did at Parking Lot Projects this summer that I think I saw it on TikTok, or somebody sent it to me or something, because people are always sending me things. But each kid started with a base of cardboard that came in like different size squares and rectangles. We cut it up right before the program. And we use acrylic paint markers a lot. And so they used acrylic paint markers to just paint something on their cardboard, wrapped some yarn around it, added some beads however they wanted to, but which is very much a step-by-step instruction thing. I gave them step-by-step instructions. You use your markers to do this thing. You wrap your yarn around, you add your beads after you wrap your yarn around 3 or 4 times. But adding that the process component is, it was up to you what you could paint in the background if you wanted to. And then also, because we have done process art so much, most of the kids were like, well, we're not following the instructions. I don't know why you even gave this to us. So some kids just painted, some kids made bracelets with the yarn and the beads. They did all kinds of other things. But, and I use semi-process art, or I used to a lot in story time. So we'll talk about that in a little bit too, when we get to the examples. Process art is a very powerful developmental tool for kids. And there's so many really good benefits. It encourages creative and critical thinking. Like I said before, the kids are making all the decisions. So they're predicting what's going to happen, they're planning, they're problem solving as they decide which materials they'll use to help them make their favorite character, or figuring out which glue is best to use with craft sticks, which is a lot of trial and error sometimes, or how to turn a pipe cleaner into a pumpkin. And there's lots of outside the box thinking that goes into process art for these kids, especially when we really do get out of the way and let them do their own thing. As they're making all these decisions on their own and overcoming any challenges that they have, and seeing these visions that they have in their head come to life, their confidence increases, which is really cool to watch. And because there's no right or wrong process or ways to do things, there are really no mistakes for them to fix. And when there's no mistakes to fix, it really does increase their confidence. And the more you do process art, the more you can see that confidence increase, which is really cool. As they're overcoming those challenges, like, I've squirted too much glue on this piece of paper, how am I going to fix this? Or I can't quite get my pipe cleaner in the need it. They're developing a growth mindset, which we all know is really important. Process art supports language development, because not only are we gifting kids with new words when we introduce them to new materials or new ways to use materials, also these kids are going to want to talk about their art, and they're going to talk while they're creating their art. So they're going to, ask, how did you do this thing? Or can you share your treasures with me? Or can you share your glue with me, kind of thing. So it really does promote language development, which is, of course, really, really important. It provides opportunities for social and emotional development, because the kids are sometimes creating things together, or sitting at the same table, having conversations and creating. And of course, art is a great way to express and release emotion, especially when you don't have the verbal or the communication skills yet to express what you're feeling. So allowing them the space to explore materials and create whatever they want allows them the space to express themselves freely. Of course, it develops important motor skills. We know this because we're all librarians in this group, and we all know how important creating fine motor skills are. By holding a paintbrush helps you hold a pencil down the road, or squeezing clay helps you do that. It increases self-regulation, because not only are they learning things like not to use too much glue, or how to keep the markers off their arms and things like that, they're also learning all these lessons. And there's this great quote from the Brightwell blog that I really like, that says, with no goal in mind, they can deeply engage in what they are creating without being interrupted. This means they are learning to focus and concentrate, and even extend their attention span, which is really cool. Especially in a day and age where a lot of kids spend a lot of time in front of a screen, which affects their ability to concentrate. And then we're going to talk a little bit in a different slide about how it saves you time and money, because I did want to delve in that a little bit deeper when we get to that part. This is a supply list of what I keep on hand in our closet. That's a picture of our closet. It's usually not that neat. But we try to keep all these things on hand. I'll talk about how it saves time to have all these things on hand later. But I know we're really blessed to have the ability to purchase those things, or have a community that donates a lot of really cool things to us. I just got a really nice donation from one of our volunteers, who brought me one of those boxes of like classroom sets of Crayola crayons. where everything's all divided up. And like my type A personality loves those boxes. So I was really excited. We also save everything that we possibly think we're going to use again. We just got, I had glow sticks that we used at a program the other night, and the glow sticks came in these cardboard tubes that we saved, because you never know when you're going to use those cardboard tubes in a project. So we purchase things, we take donations, we reuse everything we possibly can. And people have seen us do process art so many times that they will bring us, like, leftover yarn from a project that they've done at home, which is really cool. I am going to add a handout that has a list of these supplies, so don't worry about having to take a picture or take anything down. But I did want to point out that Tinker Lab guide that I love so much refers to 4 types of materials to use. So even if you don't have room for all of these things, if you at least have something that you can use for a base and a tool and a connector, and you keep a few treasures on hand, then you can pull those out and do a process art project at any time. Bases you can think of those as like the foundation of the artwork. So it's like that piece of paper you need to build on, or the clay that you're going to mold, or your cardboard tube you're going to decorate. It could be canvases. We've done wood, we've done sandpaper before. We've used all kinds of things as bases. Tools are, of course, the things the art supply that you're using to create your art, or the paintbrush that you're using to control your paint, the pencils and the markers you're using to draw, or the actual paint that you're using. And tools could be anything. We've used sponges, we've used forks, we've used all kinds of things. Connectors, of course, hold your stuff together. You can use glue, tape, wire, stickers. We use pipe cleaners a lot, especially when we're doing things that hang. And then your treasures are the thing I consider your fun stuff. So they're not absolutely necessary to your project, but they just add some fun, like some feathers or some pom-poms. We always have wiggle eyes or googly eyes because the kids love them so much. So how this saves you time and money, which is both things are really important to me. When you're doing a project, say that snowman, you're spending time cutting your pieces out. Maybe it's a take and make, or it's a thing that's going to sit at the table that the kids come and do with their own. So you're writing instructions, you're making your example, you're setting up your space. I used to do, when I first started my career, we only did projects for story time, because that's kind of was the mandate at the time. So I was taking things to cut out home with me all the time, and would like watch a movie and cut out 48 snowman heads or whatever I was doing. But in process art, the only thing you're doing is choosing your supplies. There's no instructions, there's no example to make, there's no things to pre-cut. So when we're doing process art, I just walk into the closet and pull the things off the shelf that I need. And sometimes there's not even a plan. Sometimes we're going to do collage today. So Elizabeth or Sarah or I will go in the closet and just pull a bunch of collage materials and put them on the table. So it saves us time. It also saves us money. I looked up in a certain website that you can buy craft kits for, which I will say there is a time and place for those kits. But currently 48 monster magnet kits that come with foam and pom-poms and wiggle eyes are, $34, which is, it would be about 69 cents per project for only those 48 projects. Once those 48 projects are done, if you have a 49th kid, shows up, sorry about it. But I looked up those same supplies on Amazon, which is where a lot of us get our supplies from, and I could get those same foam sheets to make 100 monster magnets for $43.71. And then, maybe they're monsters, maybe they're something else, because it's process. We just would throw the foam sheets on the table and tell the kids to make a magnet. But we would have leftover foam sheets. We would have leftover foam pieces, because we save scraps from everything. We would have leftover pom-poms and wiggle eyes and magnets that we would use. So not only would, we could make 75 to, and for like 44 cents a piece, we would also have leftover supplies to use for other projects. So it really does save you money. 4 years ago, I bought a box of chalk pastels for like $14, and we've used them for 4 years for story time. We've used them in the Learning Depot. We use them Eclipse Day. I've used them for parking lot projects and our spring break activities. So $14 has gone a long way with process art. There are some tips and tricks for introducing process art. I know sometimes it can be a daunting task to introduce it to grown-ups, especially grown-ups who are very used to their kid like going through step-by-step instructions, or having a penguin that looks like a penguin at the end. And it can be very, very important for those grown-ups. It can also be very important for those grown-ups to take what my assistant Elizabeth calls fridge fodder home with them. And sometimes with process art, you don't always get that piece of paper or that penguin or that snowman to hang on your fridge. So here's some tips and tricks that I've found over the years for introducing process art. One is, of course, model good practices with your caregivers. Make sure you're asking open-end questions. Say yes as much as possible when the kids ask, can I have more paint? Can I use a whole entire roll of washi tape on this project? Can I mix these colors together? So let your caregiver see you saying yes, because that's the process this kid wants to have. And the more they see you saying yes, the more comfortable they will be with the project. If you see a caregiver start to say something like, penguins only have 2 eyes, so, get rid of 2 of the 4 you've put on there. If you can cut them off in the pass and say something like, wow, look at all those eyes you put on your penguin. Your penguin must see really well in the water. That kind of helps them figure out that it doesn't always have to be perfect or exactly what you thought it was going to be. Also, if you see those caregivers starting to help, we've talked about this a lot in a lot of different sessions that I've been in over the years. Give your caregivers a piece of paper or a thing of model magic or whatever you're working on, so they have the materials to do their own project. If this feels awkward to you, or if this feels like sometimes a caregiver might take it as you calling them out, you can start your program by saying, we're going to try something different today. Everybody's going to make their own artwork. And then all the grown-ups get into the process. And that sometimes helps people not feel like, they're in the spotlight or being called out. Be intentional in your setup. If it's going to be messy, make sure you use tablecloths. You'll thank yourself in the long run, and it will also make your grown-ups feel like it's okay to make a mess, and your kids too. We always set up our materials, like when we're doing collages and things like that, in cute little trays. They don't always stay in cute little trays the way that you set them up in the beginning, but it looks really nice in the beginning, and it looks like something that you're supposed to play with or create with. Use spill-proof cups for water and paint. If you don't want your kids to squeeze an entire bottle of glue out on a piece of paper, only give them a half-filled bottle of glue. So just always be intentional. Always embrace the mess. It is a little messy sometimes, but if you set up your space intentionally, that will help. And always remember that messy play and that messy, messy art and getting your hands a little dirty is an important part of child development, which is a whole nother session. But always be flexible, because know that whatever you have in mind is not what those kids are going to have in mind. Create your own art gallery. I think this one is really, really important. This one helps with the not taking a piece of paper home with you every time too. If the kids know that they're not taking it home with them because it's going to hang up in the library, or if they're working on a collaborative project and they know that it's going to be displayed somewhere in the library, it sometimes helps them leave it behind. And then you can ease into projects where we've done a couple where there wasn't anything to take home because it was also part of a science experiment or something. It can also help, like I know a lot of times, somebody's used a lot of paint and their project isn't dry enough to take home. And that also helps with those hurt feelings too. If they know that if they leave it there to let it dry, it's going to be hung up. We have a really cool Learning Depot that you'll see pictures of in a little bit. The kids know at this point that everything they make in the Learning Depot or at any of our programs, that if they leave it behind, we're going to hang it up in their Learning Depot, like our own art gallery. And then a good way to start easing into process art and not having things to take home with you and that you're going to display stuff is collaborative art, which also is really important to child development. So I have some examples of collaborative art that we'll talk about in a little bit. All right, now to our examples. And these are all things that we have done in the library that we've had a whole lot of fun with over the years, because I want you to have concrete examples of what we've done. When I used to do story time in our old building, we were in a small space. We were actually in the children's area, so that's why we're all crammed around that little table. But a lot of times, instead of, if we read 4 books about winter, instead of then making a snowman, I would give them a blue piece of paper and a lot of collage materials and just said, okay, we read 4 books. Create something that looks like your favorite part, or that represents your favorite part in the book that we just read. Or what's your favorite thing about winter? Can you turn that into an artwork or something like that? So we did a lot of collages. And then they had like an actual piece of paper to take home, which made the grown-ups happy, which was always kind of fun. The little girl in the picture with her open book, if we, sometimes you don't have a theme for your story time. So I would just give them a piece of paper with an open book and say, what was your favorite book we read today? And then they would, or what's your favorite thing about reading? And she would make her cute little collage. Sticky collages are fun too, which is what they're doing in that paper. They were pre-cut shapes that you peel off the backing and then it's all sticky. And so you actually stick your things on the sticky collage. We did collage a lot in story time. And then listed in our list of supplies, I also had natural things like sticks and flower petals and stuff like that. Elizabeth does story time now, and she uses natural elements a lot in their art. So if you'll play the cute little reel that she did, Amy, for autumn story time, she actually went out into our garden and gathered up pieces of dried plants and flowers and stuff, and the kids stuck their pieces down into some clay, and they all look totally different. They actually ended up using them as centerpieces for a different project that they did. But she used, she brought pieces of nature inside into their art, which is also really important. We've done, this summer we did anything but a paintbrush at parking lot projects, which is we never get to do in the parking lot because it's always hot or the air quality stinks or it's raining or whatever. So we're renaming it something different next year. But at parking lot projects, at least one of the activities we have set up is always process. And one of the favorites this summer was anything but a paintbrush. I just went into the closet and we pulled out anything that we thought the kids could potentially use as a paint. So we had straws, we had pipe cleaners, we had skewers, we had toothbrushes. I think I may have gone outside and pulled some things off some trees for the kids to use. It was really fun. Oh, there's our little reel. Elizabeth is really good at making videos. I am not. So this is her little video of some of the things that she went out and gathered from outside that the kids then used. They look like little sculptures. They were so much fun for the kids. So I did something similar to anything but a paintbrush a few years ago, but instead of paintbrushes, we used writing surfaces. I had sandpaper. I had sandpaper, I had wood, paper towels, regular pieces of paper. We had canvas, and then we laid out markers and pencils and crayons, and the kids were encouraged to draw or write on all the different surfaces with all the different writing utensils. And we talked about, which one worked best with markers. What did it feel like to write on sandpaper with crayon? So we had lots of really good conversations from that. And that was a favorite parking lot project too. This year for parking lot projects, we hung a sheet up outside. The one we got to do outside, we hung a sheet up, and I gave the kids spray bottles, and they had some like super soakers too, which they thought was really cool. And we filled up 5-gallon buckets that were donated by our local bakery with colored water, and they just sprayed the sheet with colored water, and had this like collaborative thing. And some of the kids did not want to do anything else. They wanted to stand there for like hours and hours and spray the sheet, and we had to pull out 2 sheets because the first one got too wet. But the kids loved it. And then Sarah, who did stay and plays over the summer, turned it into a different process art by using colored water and spray bottles for the kids to spray on those watercolor papers. And of course, the watercolor papers were too soaked for the parents to even think about putting in their cars. So instead, we let them dry and hung them up as the sky over our mountains in our jungle. The kids had a really good time with that. A favorite also of the summer, especially of our younger kids, was splat painting. I will say it was also a favorite of my teen volunteers and some of the staff. We got these really big like roasting peck trays because this one was really messy and we had to be inside, and so we were kind of containing it. But I had liquid watercolors, and the kids dipped cotton balls in liquid watercolor. You put your cotton ball on the piece of paper, and then you hit it with a little wood mallet, and there's zero control about, where the paint goes or anything like that. And of course, these were projects that mostly did not end up going home with the kids. But the kids were mixing color. They were figuring out how much, was too much watercolor paint to put on their cotton balls. They were figuring out whether they wanted to hit the cotton ball harder and make a bigger splat, or if they barely touched it, it would make a little splat. So the kids were exploring all kinds of different things to do this, and it was really fun to watch. We've done science and art projects that either we ended up with something that did not and could not go home with you, or something that was hung up in our learning depot. The first project is a favorite of my grandkids, actually, where you fill a tray with baking soda and then you squirt colored vinegar on it, which then of course bubbles up, and you make craters and all kinds of cool stuff. And you can let it sit overnight and it will kind of harden a little bit, but it's definitely not something you want to keep too long. But this was just all about exploring and creating a temporary art project that they could do. We made our learning depot this summer was a jungle to go along with the summer theme and the artwork that we created in-house. And so we laid a bunch of supplies on the table, like foam shapes and clothespins and pipe cleaner and whatever we had in the closet, and encouraged the kids to make plants and bugs and animals and other things to leave behind to help us decorate the learning depot with. And we hung them up everywhere in the learning depot. So I think that's a carnivorous plant that one of the kids made. And we combined it with science by having some information laying out on the table about like carnivorous plants or animals that live in the jungle. This is a couple of pictures of some things in the learning depot. I wanted to make sure that there were some pictures that were kind of messier in there. That was after a project, but in our creation station learning depot that was all art themed, we put a bunch of stuff on the table, and the only direction was to make anything. The kids could use those supplies to make whatever they wanted to, and we would just keep refilling the table every day and making sure that we had those bases and tools and connectors and treasures every day. Those are some different things that we've hung up in the art or in the learning depot over the years. Right now our depot is kitchen themed, which has been really fun and one of my favorites. And we've done a couple of different things in there that were kind of collage based. The one that's in the picture is we printed out some blank aprons on paper, and the kids got to design an apron, and some of them left them behind for us to hang up. Right now it's ice cream cones, so you can like, design whatever flavor ice cream cone you want on a piece of paper. My favorite thing that we have ever done that delves into collaborative art and is definitely something that the kids cannot take home with them is a glue table. For the glue table, we just cover a table with cardboard. What's underneath that mess is just a bunch of boxes taped to that table so that the kids are gluing things to the cardboard and not the actual table. But we set out bowls and baskets and buckets and cups filled with things for the kids to just explore and glue on the table. And Elizabeth wrote a little poem to go with the glue table too, because the only rule with the glue table is that you can add to it, but you can't take anyone else's work off the glue table. We've done several different versions of the glue table. This one was just all different colors and all different things on my left. And then the other one, we made sure we put tall things on that one so that the kids could build up instead of just out. On the glue table, it's important to make sure that there's both glue sticks and glue that you can squeeze too, so that they're getting all the different experiences with all the different glues and figuring out, which glue works best to glue the button down, which one works best to, the game pieces from a game that was returned without the pieces. We put anything on the glue table. The first one, the staff, we put a bowl in the back office, and the staff would put like spoons that they didn't use with their takeout in it, or if we discarded a game because it was missing pieces, we would put whatever game pieces were left in there. If somebody put something together and there were extra nuts and bolts, we would put those in the glue table basket. And the kids had so much fun with it that summer that we continued to do it. So we've done a winter themed one where everything was white and blue, and we added in some natural elements like pine cones. We did one this summer that was jungle themed, so it was lots of greens and yellows. There were actual little plastic jungle animals that the kids could glue down, and we did take those off when we were done with the glue table, and we'll recycle those. But there were lots of vines, lots of leafy things for the kids to glue on. And it was really cool because the kids started making like tree houses and bridges and this whole jungle world for their animals to live in. And they did it all together because it stays at the library. And they all ask when it's coming back. I also wanted to make a point. We've talked about process art and the importance in story time and younger kids, but process art is not just for kids. That is the entire percussion section of our high school marching band, gluing things to the glue table. And because they were here for a steel drum program this summer, and then the band director couldn't get them to leave and thought he was going to have to leave them behind at the library because they were excited to be here to create. With the teens, we've done things where you for our anti-Valentine party, we've taken teddy bears and turned them into something else. I've given them just a bunch of supplies and told them to make anti-Valentines. A favorite was Frisbee art, which was really popular on TikTok and other social media platforms last year. But we just squirted paint on a canvas and then you throw it with a Frisbee and there is zero control. The only thing I recommend is not doing it the day after they've mowed the yard because there was a lot of grass in our projects. And they had a whole lot of fun with that one. And then I talked briefly about collaborative art. So I wanted to show you some of those projects that we've done, which are a little semi-process because we gave them prompts or we told them it was for a specific thing. So there was a little bit of process in there and that everybody's looked a little different, or they could turn it into whatever dragon scale or thing they wanted to turn it into. So there was a little process in there and a little project. But the collaborative art is really, really important. And you can combine collaborative and process into something really amazing. For our Once Upon a Time themed Learning Depot, Elizabeth made this amazing dragon that we hung from the ceiling, and then the kids each made scales. Every time they came in the library, they can make a different scale, and they filled the whole dragon up, and we almost had to start a second one. but they could find their scales in that, and they were really excited. We celebrated Won't You Be My Neighbor Day because I'm a huge Mr. Rogers fan earlier this year, and the kids were given milk carton like gift boxes that you can buy on Amazon or anywhere really. And we gave them a bunch of different supplies like buttons and pom-poms and feathers and foam shapes like cut like flowers, and we had stuff to draw and paint with, and had them create their neighborhood that we displayed on the top shelf. So of course my favorite building in the neighborhood was the library, but there was a hospital, there was a McDonald's, and some of them just created random buildings too. But they got to come in and see their neighborhood, and we kept the project out for a while, for like a week, so the neighborhood could continue to grow for a week. As part of Won't You Be My Neighbor Day, we also made a community quilt out of paper, and so the kids could come in and decorate their square, and then we hung it all on the community quilts. And we had the community quilts up for, I don't know, probably about 4 weeks before it got too heavy and just started to fall down. And our favorite was one of the kids did a portrait of our youth services staff. So that's our portrait there. Whoops. I wanted to make sure that there was time for questions or comments or anything like that, if there were any questions that I missed. Also, I want to leave you with a really positive note. This is a piece of artwork that was gifted to me by one of our regular patrons. He gave it to me. He was really proud of it. But he said, I just really wanted you to know this. And so I wanted you all to know the same thing. It says you're like a firefighter because you save lives. So I keep it in my office so that I can remember that on bad days and remember the impact and the difference that we can make.
There was a question a while back. Let's see, it was when you were first talking about the difference between process and product, and looking at the project kits versus expanding and being more oriented with it. So Erin was asking, do you model your projects after pre-made things like monsters? Sorry, my text just. Or, for example, or what is your selection process to determine your theme or idea? Like,
so I generally don't model things after those kits. I just picked that because I thought it was, something that could compare the cost to do. Most of our process to determine a theme is based on whatever, sometimes whatever is going on. Like we just did one day of activities for fall break, so they were fall themes. So we did some like fall theme process art with like some fall colors. And we did one that was like a semi process that involved like a birch tree. And then I was trying to think, and if I'm doing semi process or I'm doing something for like a specific story time and there's a theme, sometimes the semi process art is based on a theme, but most of our process art is just us going to the closet and picking things that we, I might go to the closet and be like, okay, we're going to do a program tomorrow. We have way too many beads left over, so our process art theme or project that we're going to do has to involve these beads in some way. A lot of as far as finding ideas, you can Google process art and find some really great ideas out there, and some really great like guides and articles and suggestions. There are some really great Facebook groups devoted to process art that you can join. So that's the glue table came from one of those groups. There's also like some sensory play groups where you can get some process art ideas from too. So there's lots of really, really great resources out there that you can use. And once you really start, I feel like once you really get into process art and you start doing it on a regular basis, then it becomes second nature to be like, oh, we have, a program coming tomorrow. I don't know what craft we're going to do. So we're just going to pull out all the paint to try. Just looking through the chat.
You can almost always make a theme fit, or vice versa, make an idea fit a theme. So even the most bizarre ones can be connected in one way or another. So, do you need to get rid of materials, or is there something you're really itching to do? And then go from one direction or the other.
Oh yeah, I really like the closet.
Well, this has been phenomenal. I will have, for this presentation is already available in the larger classroom, before you go and select room 1, 2, or 3. So that this is there for you. Suzanne, this is amazing. Just wonderful imagery and very, very powerful. Thank you for all that shared with us today. Suzanne's contact information is there. It's suzanne@henrylibrary.org. I'll also put it in the chat for you. And in the long run, if you lose it and need to contact her, contact me. I'll hook you up. So thank you again, Suzanne.
You're very welcome.
Of appreciation in the chat.